Hello, ladies. Welcome back to the Hint Hive, Amplifying Women's Voices, the podcast devoted to all things female. I'm your host, Kelly Hint, psychotherapist, feminist life coach, and your resident queen bee. Today's episode is one I've been sitting with for a long time because it's raw, it's honest, and it goes directly against what women are told we are supposed to feel. This episode is for the women who feel guilty even thinking this thought, let alone saying it out loud. I hate being a caregiver. Yikes, that one's rough, huh? If that sentence made your stomach clench, your chest tighten, or your inner critic immediately jump in with, wow, that's awful, what kind of person thinks that? Please stay with me. And if you're one of the ladies out there experiencing this, please hear me when I say this. You are not broken. You are not heartless. You are not ungrateful. You are human, and you are absolutely not alone. This episode is about telling the truth. The messy, taboo, emotionally complicated truth that women are expected to swallow quietly while smiling and holding it all together. Okay, we're going to start by naming the unspoken truth, because this matters. Caregiving is often framed as a virtue when women do it, and a burden when anyone else does it. When women are caregivers, it's called love, devotion, duty, or sacrifice. When men are caregivers, it's often called help, generosity, heroism. Women are socialized to believe that caregiving should feel natural, fulfilling, instinctual, and morally rewarding. And when it doesn't, when it feels heavy, suffocating, or soul-draining, we assume that something is wrong with us. And here's the clinical reality, not the Hallmark version. Caregiving, especially unpaid, long-term caregiving, is associated with higher rates of depression, anxiety, burnout, sleep disorders, and chronic stress-related illness. And I am sure that it is not shocking to hear that women make up the majority of caregivers worldwide, and they are far more likely to provide intensive, emotionally involved, and unpaid care over long periods of time. And unfortunately, many women become caregivers not by choice, but by default, whether because of gender norms, family pressure, cultural expectations, financial limitations, or a lack of accessible alternatives. And I want you to hear me when I say this. Hating the role of being a caregiver does not mean that you hate the person you're caring for. Let me say that again, slower and louder, because someone out there needs to hear it. You can love someone deeply and still resent the role that you were forced into. Those two things can coexist, and pretending otherwise is emotionally dangerous. And on the flip side, it is absolutely possible to despise the person that you're caring for, yet feel forced to do it anyway. And now I've also got to say, caregiver burnout is not a personal failure. As a psychotherapist, I want to be crystal clear about this part, because shame thrives in misunderstanding. Caregiver burnout is not caused by weakness, selfishness, poor character, or lack of gratitude. It is caused by systemic and psychological factors. Some of those can be chronic emotional labor without relief, or loss of autonomy and personal freedom. Role captivity, where you feel trapped with no clear exit. Inadequate or non-existent support systems. Ongoing anticipatory stress and hypervigilance. And of course, there's the loss of identity outside the caregiver role. And then another piece of burnout. It doesn't always look like falling apart. Because we're women, we're really good at this part. We're really good at hiding some of this stuff, of not admitting to it because we're not supposed to, because society tells us that this is our job. Often, burnout shows up as irritability or emotional numbness, feeling detached or resentful, fantasizing about escape or starting over, anger, followed immediately, of course, by guilt, bitterness toward people who seem unburdened, and physical exhaustion that rest just doesn't fit. If you're nodding along, I want you to hear this. This is not a diagnosis. This is not you failing. It is simply a normal nervous system response to prolonged overwhelm and unrelenting responsibility. And now this is where I pause on the education for a second and share my own story of being forced into a caregiver role. And this one is going to be tough for me to talk about. I am making myself incredibly vulnerable and opening myself up to all kinds of negative thoughts from the outside world. And you know what? I don't freaking care. That's the beauty of being in your 50s. You just stop caring about what other people say. Because you know what? If any of you have taken like basic psychology or developmental psychology, I'm in the developmental stage of my life where it matters more to me to give back, to share my wisdom. I no longer care at all what people think of me. I just hope to make a difference in this world. And so, again, clearly I'm kind of avoiding this and procrastinating because I don't want to make myself vulnerable, but I think it's incredibly important. So I guess I do want to make myself vulnerable. I just don't want the consequences of it. Okay, I will stop rambling. Okay, so the last couple of years of my life have been a bit difficult. Almost a year ago, all kinds of things happened all at once. So starting back in 2024, my husband's stepfather died, and that meant that some of the family members had to step in and help his mom with some of her things that were going on, some legal stuff with the estate. And that started a sequence of events that was incredibly difficult. So fast forward to a year later, my husband's mother dies. I'm not going to say a whole lot about that because it's still very raw for me, and that's not what the purpose of this is. So at the same time, we get a call that my husband's mom is in the hospital out in Arizona. That's where she lived during the winter. At the same time, I get a call that my father is now homeless. His house has been condemned, and it's suddenly my problem. So I am my father's only child, and he did not raise me. My mother and my stepfather raised me, and I visited my father, like, it started out like every other Sunday. I'd spend some hours with him, right? And then eventually I got a little bit older, and I spent, overnights with him. And then there was a very brief period of time that I lived with him for a couple of months, and it was not fabulous. And I had to go back to living with my mom and stepfather and siblings. Okay. And I say that because it is relevant and important to the story, because that's where part of my resentment comes from. I have now been forced into assuming financial, emotional, and every other kind of responsibility for a man who didn't give me what I needed in a parental role. He was not the father that I needed. He was very selfish. He put women ahead of me all the time. He put his music ahead of me, which went nowhere. He did the bare minimum all throughout life. Therefore, he didn't pay a whole lot in taxes. Therefore, he is now 70 years old and my financial burden, because he cannot live on the Social Security that he gets. Okay. So that's where we're at. So my husband's mother is dying in the hospital. My father is like 4.5 hours away, homeless. And I'm being told that I need to take care of this. I can't take care of this from 4 hours away. I'm not going to get into the details of everything because it's messy and ugly. Longest story in the world short, my father is now living near me. He was living with me for 2 weeks, and it was the worst 2 weeks of my entire life. He was rotten and miserable and cruel and inappropriate, and I just can't. So my husband and I found him an apartment, and now we are strapped with going over there every week to care for a man who refuses to care for himself. He's a disgusting pig. He talks about, he just objectifies women constantly, talking about this woman's ass, that woman's ass. He'd do this one, he'd do that one. So basically, he's a constant friggin' trigger for me to even be around. He lets loose even more when it's just he and my husband. So I have to clean his home because he refuses to. And we had, my husband's name is on the lease for the apartment because my father didn't qualify financially for it. Okay. So I have to clean the apartment because I can't afford to pay someone else to clean it. And if I don't clean it, I am going to end up being financially responsible for any damages. Okay. So before I hear people coming at me, you don't have to do this. Well, I kind of do, right? So I have all kinds of anger and resentment. I am taking care of somebody who is incredibly irresponsible and rude and unappreciative. And you may be saying to me, who are you? You are not the queen bee of this podcast that talks about boundaries and saying no and being assertive and blah, blah, blah. Well, I'm still her. I just have a really bad soft spot for humanity. So I am not looking at this man like my father. I can't. Because if I do, I hate him. And I hate my life. And I'm miserable. And okay, I'm not even going to go too deep into that. So instead, I have to look at this man as A homeless man who lost his home because he's a disgusting freaking slob that refused to take care of anything, but he is vulnerable and I just can't let him freeze outside and die from being homeless, right? So that's why I took on this burden. I can't even say it like that because I don't even feel like I took it on. I was forced into this. I feel forced into this. And so I just feel like what has happened to me over the last year has affected me so deeply that I'm finally at the point now where I feel like I need to talk about it because there are so many of you that could potentially be in this spot someday or you're in it now. And I don't want you to feel like I feel. I feel angry all the time. I'm sad. Okay. And here's where part of it is. I gave the best friggin' years of my life to my children. I put my entire career, all of my dreams and aspirations on hold to be a mom. I did that willingly. I did it by choice, and I have zero regrets for that. However, here I am now, a grown-ass woman desperately wanting to retire because I am so exhausted from taking care of everybody my entire freaking life that I just can't see past how angry I am because now, at this period in my life where I have so many career aspirations still. I have things that I want to do with this podcast that I think are amazing. I have public speaking dreams, and all of it has been placed on hold. For the last 2 years, I've been trying to fight through things because of all of these family tragedies happening, but the last year has just about damn ruined me. That's why I'm angry. That's why I'm resentful, because I already sacrificed enough as a mother. And again, I did it willingly. I did it lovingly. I have zero regrets about that. But I did it under the assumption that my time would come, right? And I know I sound like a petulant little child as I say that. What about me, right? Not fair. Crossing my arms, stamping my feet. I know that it sounds like that, but I don't care because I know that there is someone out there listening that is nodding their head or maybe even crying with me right now because they know what it's like to sacrifice and put everything on hold for someone else and then just getting kicked in the ass in return. So I feel like this is one of the reasons that fuels my feminism. I feel like my choice was taken away from me. I feel like I had to take on the responsibility of another human being before I was ready, before I finished living my damn life. I am carrying expectations that I never agreed to, but have been punished for questioning. All of my career aspirations and exciting new ventures have been put on hold, possibly indefinitely, because of this burden that has been forced on me. I'm angry. I feel guilty. And you know what? I've gotten silent. I have withdrawn from everyone except my husband. I don't reach out to anyone anymore because I am just so bitter and angry. But you know what? One of the things that I will celebrate is that I'm still freaking resilient. I know that I'm going to push through this because I always do. I always figure it out. I'm not going to let this be the end of all of my dreams. And I'm sorry if hearing all of that was uncomfortable, because I'm not trying to make anyone uncomfortable. Not in a bad way. I want to make you uncomfortable in a good way. I want you to learn from my mistakes of ever allowing this to happen in the first place. My father should have been left at the hospital that he was taken to instead of dumped in my damn lap. But that is not the case. And I felt too guilty at the time to take care of myself and my own needs and to say no. Please do not put yourself in that same position. It's ugly, it's messy, and I don't want you to feel angry and bitter and resentful like I do. And you know what? This may sound stupid coming from someone who made the wrong choice, but if you are being put in this position and you want to push back on it, reach out, because I'm telling you, I will empower the crap out of you to say no. I will help you to say no. I will help you find resources so that it's not your burden, because I do not want you to feel the way I feel, because this crap sucks. And I do not want you to feel like this. All right, now let's zoom out, because this is bigger than individual families or circumstances. This is bigger than my anger and resentment. We need to look at this through the feminist lens and start dissecting why women are expected to sacrifice. Caregiving expectations do not exist in a vacuum. They exist inside patriarchy. Women are conditioned from a very young age to put others first at all costs, to confuse self-sacrifice with love, to believe boundaries are selfish or cruel, to earn worth through usefulness and endurance, and to believe that good women don't complain. So when you say, I hate being a caregiver, what you're really pushing back against is forced self-erasure. I feel that one in my very bones. I feel like I am losing who I am, and I do not want you to lose who you are, because you are too amazing for that. Ladies, feminism is not about refusing care or lacking compassion. Feminism is about consent, choice, shared responsibility, and valuing women as whole humans, not just resources. Ladies, you are allowed to ask hard questions like, why did this automatically become my responsibility? Who benefits from my silence and endurance? What support should exist but doesn't? What would caregiving look like if it were truly shared? My fellow queens, those questions are not selfish. They are liberating. Okay, so if any of you out there listening hate being a caregiver, let's get practical. These are some trauma-informed, realistic steps, not toxic positivity, not just be grateful nonsense, okay? So the first piece is to name the feeling without judging it. Say it out loud, write it down, or whisper it if you have to. I hate this role. Naming the feeling does not make you a bad person. It makes you an honest one. Feelings lose power when they're acknowledged instead of suppressed. And then the next step, separate the person from the role. This distinction is essential for your mental health. Try this reframe. I love you, but I resent this responsibility. Resentment grows when we're not allowed to differentiate between love and obligation. And then the next step, audit what's actually required versus what's assumed. Ask yourself without judgment, what am I truly responsible for? What have I taken on out of guilt, fear, or expectation? What would realistically happen if I did less? Who might be uncomfortable but survive if I stepped back? Not everything that you're doing is mandatory. Some of it is inherited obligation masquerading as necessity. And I'm telling you, as I've worked through this one myself, I am making better decisions. I'm stretching out responsibilities a little bit more. I'm reorganizing a little bit more. I'm still not where I need to be regarding getting some help with this burden, but I am making steps in the right direction because I cannot and will not live like this much longer. The next step, and this is an important one, build some micro boundaries. If you can't leave the role, you can still limit how much of you it consumes. Some good examples of micro boundaries, and some of these I've done myself. No caregiving conversations after a certain hour. I've told my husband, I'm not talking about him right now. I'm sorry, not doing it. And then one day or evening a week where you are not on call. Make that happen. And then another one saying, I can't do that today without over-explaining. I actually had to say to my father's doctor, I said, I'm not available to do that. So if you want that done, that's something that'll have to be figured out by someone else because I'm just not doing it. And then here's another piece for my perfectionists that really struggle with this. Allow someone else to do it differently than you would. If somebody is offering you help, take it, even if they are not doing it the way you want it to be done. And please remember that boundaries do not require permission. They require practice. And I think that's why it has thrown me off so much in my personal life, because I'm really good at boundaries and I practice boundaries all the time. But this one hit me when I was vulnerable. I was grieving the imminent loss of my mother-in-law, and my husband was grieving. And so we kind of allowed things to happen that should not have. And then this next piece, this last one, it's an important one too. Get support that centers you. Because caregivers need care too, full stop. Support might look like individual therapy focused on burnout and identity loss, or some coaching to get you to a better place, to get you doing things that you want to do also, or caregiver support groups where honesty is welcome. And if there's any possibility, respite care, even if it feels uncomfortable at first. And then this one's important for me personally. One person that you can be unfiltered with. One person where you can say the vile things that you don't ever want another person to hear, but they will accept you and love you anyway. And if the only response you get is, but they need you, let me tell you, you are not being supported. You are being silenced. And I do want to put in here, I've got to add this in here because my husband is in this as equally as I am. The day that his mother died, he didn't tell me until we were almost at the place where we had to sign a lease to get my father out of our home. He put his grief on hold because he knew that if he got home and he told me that his mom had passed, that I would want to care for him and take care of his needs. But we were on a desperate time crunch. We were driving 60 miles an hour, a half hour away to try and get to this place to get a lease signed. It was this crazy time crunch thing. And so my husband put his grief on the back burner for me. That's another reason why I resent this whole thing. Because my husband and I weren't allowed to grieve like normal human beings because of this burden that we had. This burden that we feel was forced on us. So, moral of the story, my fellow queens, please learn from my mistakes because I don't ever want you to feel the way I feel right now. All right, Hive, let's talk about this week's affirmation because it is especially powerful for caregivers, and I kind of need an affirmation myself right now, right? So this week's affirmation, I can sit with really freaking big feelings and I am still okay. My friends, caregiving brings up emotions women are told we're not allowed to have. Rage, grief, resentment, boredom, despair, jealousy. This affirmation does not ask you to fix the feeling or minimize it or spiritually bypass it. It asks you to trust yourself, to trust that you can feel something intense without it destroying you. You do not need to rush past your anger. You do not need to justify your sadness. You do not need to dilute your truth in order to stay lovable. You can sit with the feeling. You can breathe through it. And you can still be a good, compassionate, worthy human, even on the days that you hate this role. That, my queens, is emotional resilience. That is nervous system strength. That is feminist healing. All right, Hive, my final thoughts. You are more than what you provide. You existed before this role, and you will exist beyond it. You need to reclaim yourself beyond the caregiver identity. You are allowed to want rest without guilt, freedom without justification, joy without earning it, and a future that includes you, not just your usefulness. Caregiving may be part of your life, but it is not the sum of who you are. All right, ladies, if this episode resonated, come join the Hive if you're not already a part of it over on Facebook. Join our Facebook group where caregivers are allowed to be human, women are allowed to be fully themselves, not heroic, not silent, not endlessly grateful. And of course, if it resonated or you know somebody who it will resonate with, share this episode. Share it with a woman who needs permission to tell the truth. And then also, spend some time reflecting this week. Whether you are in a caregiving role or not, where can I choose myself just a little without apologizing or over-explaining? And if you want deeper support, then therapy or coaching are powerful spaces to unpack caregiving guilt, trauma, resentment, and burnout. Reach out to me if you're ready to begin the work. I would love to walk with you and support you throughout your journey. Remember, Hive, you are allowed to hate the role. You are allowed to love yourself anyway. You are allowed to want more out of life. Until next time, keep buzzing, keep setting boundaries, and keep telling your truth. This podcast is powered by Kelly Hint Empowerment Coaching, as well as Kelly M. Hint LMHC and The Cranky Counselor. To find out more about coaching services, head over to CoachKellyHint.com. If you'd like to know more about the psychotherapy services I offer to individuals within the state of New York, you can check out KellyMHint.com. And if you'd like to learn more about aromatherapy, you can check out TheCrankyCounselor.com.